So naturally, we begin with Paraguay. It's something I don't really talk about very much. And it's a country, depending on who you ask. It's either a deeply important story. It's something Americans vaguely assume is right next to Uruguay because, well, the name's right. Uh, uh, so what's your Uruguay connection?
Well, so my family is a family that doesn't actually have a country. So when people say, "Oh, like, what ethnicity? Where are you from?" I'm like, well, technically Prussia, which doesn't actually exist. And
At least
so,
not.
at least not by name, yes. And so my grandparents, great grandparents, many generations back are from Ukraine, Russia, and then in the late 20s moved to Paraguay, to the Chaco, the desert side. Kind of made a life of farming there. And so my mom and dad and both my brothers were born there, and then they moved off to Argentina, which is where I was born and lived the first like 4 years of my life. And then we moved to Canada because it was during some really bad inflation years and they were not making a lot of money and couldn't really afford to feed us. And so moved to Canada in the hopes of giving us a better life. So that's kind of my connection to Paraguay. And I've been back. I was back on our way to Canada. We went from Argentina to Paraguay and visited family one last time before we kind of moved away. And then the next time I went back, I was in my 20s.
Well,
Yeah, and then I have not been back since. Yeah. So what's your connection to Paraguay? Because I found that really interesting when I was like, oh, Paraguayan American author. That's really fascinating.
yeah, it's something that kind of I slid it in their radar. I kind of have a similar story to yours. Um, my my mom is from Chicago, and she went into the Peace Corps and went to Paraguay. So I was born while she was a Peace Corps volunteer there, and I left the country when I was about two. So I don't really.
Okay.
I mean, I've gone back like you. I went back to the first time when I was about 16 to meet my
Okay.
dad. So that was interesting. Who is has like a his parents emigrated to or his dad emigrated from Germany to Paraguay.
Okay.
Um, it was one of those moments of like when he told showed me a picture of my biological grandfather. I looked at my mom and I was like, "We have to go now." Um,
Oh,
yeah. Um,
oh.
it's I think it was kind of unfair to punish the sins of like punish my biological dad for the sins of his father. Uh,
Mm,
but yeah, it was something that made me deeply uncomfortable.
that's hard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I went then my mom got a job again at the Peace Corps, this time not as a volunteer, but as I think she was like some sort of director of training or whatever, and her first posting was
Okay.
Paraguay.
Okay.
And I went back as a adult. Um, and that was I got to like meet my biological dad again as an adult. My cousins, I keep in contact in Paraguay, but that's
You,
that's
you cut out a little bit there. I think you said you keep in touch with your cousins in Paraguay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Okay. Yeah.
through our WhatsApp group, so they have to put up with my dad jokes. I tell dad jokes in multiple languages.
Perfect.
Yeah, and so so you moved to Canada. How was that?
Well, it's interesting because I remember like I don't have a ton of memories from my childhood years. Like people are like, "Oh, what do you remember from Argentina?" And I'm like, "Well, I remember coming down the stairs from my bedroom, which was upstairs on Christmas Day, and like seeing a blanket on a table, and underneath the blanket were all the Christmas gifts. And I thought that was like the coolest way to open Christmas gifts. And later my mom said, well, that's because we could barely afford the gifts, let alone the wrapping paper. And so we covered them with blankets. um, it's still something we do with our kids. We have Santa sacks that we use. We've sometimes had them bring their favorite blankets and we put the gifts under. So a lot of my memories, even of coming to Canada, are kind of those kind of memories. Like I remember the first place we stayed. It was this tiny little like early 1900s house in Vancouver that had like a slanted ceiling attic. And so that was we were like we got the room in the attic. We had all of us were in there. Um, from what my mom tells me, we were only there for maybe a couple of weeks before we got into a house. Um, but the house that we moved into was what Vancouverites lovingly call a teardown. And it was one of the like 1950s Sears box houses that like you ordered out of the Sears catalog and then you assembled it yourself kind of thing. And so it was this tiny little house that had one bedroom on the main level and then two rooms up in the attic. It was totally mouse and rat infested, and it was actually going to be torn down and a new house built. So we got to live in it rent free until that happened. And so those are some of my first memories are of like being in that house and going to kindergarten and actually having a really horrible kindergarten experience. But I mean, talk about like family conditioning. Definitely raised in a very traditional, conservative kind of background, and so like you didn't question authority. And so it was literally decades before I told my mom what had happened in kindergarten, and she was horrified. Like, why didn't you tell me? And I was like, because 5-year-old Heidi didn't know that she was allowed to
Mm.
say my teacher wasn't good. Yeah, so those are kind of some of my early memories. We did move into like my uncle's house. He ended up buying a new house and selling my mom and dad his house for like a really reasonable price so that we had somewhere to live because they had literally borrowed money for everything. They borrowed money to fly us to Canada. They borrowed money to buy a car. They borrowed money to, um, you know, get my dad working. And so we did not have a lot. And so yeah, I remember moving into that house, and that's kind of where all of my good memories began in terms of like friendships and relationships and school. I switched schools, and the school that I went to was a wonderful school. I, still have friends that I'm in touch with from those elementary school years. So, yeah, so that was that was that.
Did you live in other countries outside of Argentina and Canada?
I did. Yeah, we moved to Mexico when I finished up grade five, and then the summer between grade five and grade six, we moved to Mexico. And we moved to the province of Durango, which is, I mean, if you head straight down from Texas, kind of the second province
Yeah.
down, if you head straight west from Durango, you end up in Mazatlan. So gives people a bit of a context on where that's located. But we did not move into any big city. We moved to a tiny, a little town in the mountains, 20,000 people, one gas station, one grocery store, no traffic lights, no paved streets. And then outside of that Mexican city, there was a Mennonite colony of, I want to say 500,000 Mennonite farming like community members. And my parents had specifically been brought down to be teachers for the families that were excommunicated and shunned from the community because they were doing something that was not. If you've heard women talking, if you've watched the movie Women Talking,
No,
that
I haven't
kind
seen that.
of okay. It's a powerful one, but it's not for the faint of heart. Definitely
So
trigger warning. Trigger warning on that one for anyone who watches it for sure. Um,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, but
So
yeah, so we lived there for 2.5 years, and then my parents stayed for one more year, but I moved back to Canada by myself for 1 year, back to kind of the lower mainland of BC area. Um, and yeah, I've moved around in Canada as well, so kind of from the west coast of Canada, various different cities on the west coast, and then also out to Winnipeg, which is kind of in the middle of Canada for a while. So I think I had said to you in our little writing back and forth that the house that I live in now with my partner is the longest I've ever lived anywhere. And we've been there 18 years. And prior to that, I had usually lived in a house for less than 1 year to 5 years. 5 years was like, wow, 5 years. So, and
that,
it sounds like that's a little bit your story as well. You've moved around a lot.
yeah. Um, yeah, I think one of the weirdest things about growing up across places, languages, or culture is that like you just don't adapt,
Mm,
multiply, right? Okay.
yeah.
So that is to say, like you become several versions of yourself, and then
Mm,
spending that was a personality, right?
mm,
And that, I don't know if you've had that same, but yeah, like I was born in Paraguay, then like went to Chicago, uh, then moved to Bolivia, then Ecuador, then Ghana,
wow.
and then I was lived in Madagascar, Switzerland, Oman,
Wow.
uh, and so in each, I had to learn a new language. I speak
Yeah.
like, uh, you know, you would think living in Switzerland I would have learned German. No, I lived on the Italian speaking side of Switzerland, which quite frankly was great. Um, though, but those are fighting words amongst the Swiss. Um, and then within the U.S., like I'm at some point in my life, we moved to Massachusetts in 1997, and then
Okay.
and my parents bought a house in Ashland, Massachusetts. And if you've never heard of the booming metropolis of Ashland, Massachusetts,
I have not.
yeah, yeah, it's a small suburb, uh, 24 miles west of Boston. I
Okay.
figure because the Boston
Oh,
Marathon.
you're cutting out a little bit periodically,
Oh,
Chris. I'm not sure what's going on.
oh, let's see. Might take my headphones out.
Okay.
Is this
Oh, that
better?
seems yeah, that seems a bit clearer.
Okay, yeah. No more headphones for me, I suppose.
Ah,
Um,
I guess they were getting confused. So I missed the last little bit that you said. So go ahead, repeat up, please. That'd be
yeah,
great.
so I the town I grew up in from like high school or pretty much high school was 26 or 24 miles west of Boston. And
Okay.
I know that precise figure because the Boston Marathon ran through my town.
Oh, that's so
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, we were like on the 2 mile marker. So,
Okay.
um, and then I wanderlust got the best of me, and so that's when I moved to Madagascar, Switzerland, Oman, and
Mm,
yeah, mostly for work, mostly for school, and yeah.
okay. I was curious because when you said all those, I was like, was this all because of your mom's job? But it sounds like part of it, but not all of it.
Yeah, so up until 1997, it was all up until Ghana was the last place we lived. I was
Okay.
just a wee little lad. It was my parents eventually started working for not large nonprofits. Um,
Okay.
and so then that's what took us everywhere. Uh, and
Okay.
and then I carried that baton, working for initially I was working for a mining company in their corporate social responsibility team, and
Mm,
that took me to interesting places. So
yeah.
yeah, and then federal contracting and all that
Okay.
all that nice jazz. So it's
Yeah.
out of that came the ability to speak. I speak 5 languages fluently, and
Wow.
I forgot to add Turkey in the mix. Uh,
Okay.
yeah, at some point I also made it to Turkey, and it was right after my undergrad,
Okay.
during my undergrad and a little bit after my undergrad years, mainly because I started dating a Turkish girl, and
Okay. There was a
and
draw there.
yeah, and the best way to learn a language is to get, um,
Immersion.
yeah, or get a girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever you're into, uh, to learn that language, and then
Hmm.
we we spent time in Turkey together, and yeah, that she was the girl that got away.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting, like living in a different country, like your description of, kind of thinking that you're a different person each place you are. I think my experience of that was a little different, but that's, I think, because of who I am. I felt like I was myself wherever I was, but the result of that was I spent most of my life feeling like I didn't fit anywhere. Because I could never quite be exactly like everybody else around me. Um, and I remember like moving to Mexico, and I was super excited to go. Like I was all about adventure and going new places. And my dad was very much like he'd be the guy like, oh, we should drive this way home just to see where it goes. And I'd be like, yeah. So that was me in terms of personality. And so moving to Mexico, I like it didn't scare me at all. I was excited about it. There were lots of like things that I got to do that I, had heard about with my parents growing up on the farm in the Chaco. Like I got to milk a cow and I got to, wrangle chickens, and we got to like help with different things on the farm. And so that was a cool experience. But once I was in Mexico, even though it totally felt like home, it also didn't feel like home. Like Canada was home. And we would sometimes come back for a couple of weeks to visit. And, of course, when you're back for 2 weeks, everyone wants to see you and everyone loves you and it's all great. And so I would leave, like being sad about having to leave Canada, but at the same time being really excited to go back and see my friends and the people that I loved in Mexico. And then I remember when I moved back to Canada, and I was like, in my mind, I thought, oh, I'm moving home. Um, and that was when, as a 13-year-old, I discovered the concept of reverse culture shock, which nobody had ever prepared me for. I didn't even have like a term for it. I just knew what it felt like, and it was really terrible. So much so that when I did my undergrad, in one of my classes, I actually wrote a paper on reverse culture shock because I was like, I need to unpack what happened to me. And so just that sense of like being able to fit in everywhere, but not feeling like I belong anywhere. So I don't know if you had any of that as well, but
Yes.
yeah,
Yes. I and I think it's very common for people that grow up like us
yeah,
to feel like you belong everywhere but are from nowhere all at once. Uh,
yeah,
even even and I'm not sure if you've felt this, but I feel this now still. Of My passport says I'm American. I was American like since I was born, even though I was born in
yeah.
Paraguay. Like my mom took
Okay.
me to the embassy. I was I had it's the only passport I've always had. But
Mm,
um, I would as a kid I would come spend my summers here. Um, when we were living abroad, and then when we moved here, it was I couldn't feel like I was at home. I had that
mm,
reverse culture shock too, and
yeah.
every time I I felt more comfortable abroad than
Mm,
returning and coming back home because
mm.
each time I've returned home, it was
It's hard.
it's harder to adapt back here. Like I feel like I've
Yeah.
missed a lot. Uh,
Yeah.
and like I didn't even know who Taylor Swift was when I came back, and
Gosh.
it's like, and those Swifties, they judge you.
Oh, yeah. Oh my gosh, that's funny. Yeah. Oh.
Um,
I'm curious, like, how do you define home?
so it depends. Uh, my definition of home is where I spent most of, or I don't have a clear definition. I know where home
Okay.
is, right?
Okay.
For me, home has always been Massachusetts. And when
Mm,
people ask me why, um, I spent most of my formative years here in Massachusetts. So,
mm.
uh, like high school,
Okay.
and it's where I had where the first time I felt rooted anywhere.
Mm, hmm.
And so this was always home, and it was and my parents had the house in Ashland till 2013 or 14. So from
Wow.
1997 to
Okay.
2013, it was somewhere I could always come back to, no
Okay.
matter where I was.
Interesting.
And even when in 2016 or 2000 no 2014 we moved back, when I was married. I came moved back to Maryland from
Okay.
Madagascar. And in 2020, we bought a house in Maryland. And
Okay.
so I was like, okay, so this might be home. But even then, like I still felt the
Mm,
strong pull to always return here to Massachusetts.
mm. Okay.
And and so I know where home is, but
Yeah.
I'm still struggling with that definition of what is home.
Yeah. Okay. That's so interesting. I find this is one of those questions that I love asking people because everyone has a really different answer. And I think because we moved around so much, even like once we were settled back in BC, my mom and dad still moved around a lot. Um, and so I've never kind of identified home with one specific place. And so that's actually, I find in some ways it's made things easy, and in some ways it's made things challenging. Because I think for me, home, even growing up, like if you'd asked me at age 10, what is home? I would have said home is where the people that I love are. Because that for me was like wherever we are, I've got the people I love with me. And so, very much like home for me has been tied to people, not places. And yet, if you ask me, do I feel at home in BC? I do. We've thought about moving to other parts of the province because where we live is beautiful and everybody wants to live there and it's stupidly expensive. And so, sometimes we think, man, we could make life a lot easier if we didn't live here. But gosh, it's so beautiful. Like, this is why people pay to live here. But then I lived in Winnipeg for 4 years and I deeply, deeply connected with Winnipeg. So I at times have thought about what would it be like to move back to Winnipeg because I still have community there. I still have friends. We have family there. But yeah, for me, home is always kind of connected to the people. My husband grew up in the Lower Mainland, and I think his parents bought the house just before he was born or just after he was born. And they still lived in that house when he and I met. And he was 28, I was
Hmm.
23. And he was still like moving home back and forth in between. Like he'd move out with roommates and then they'd all get married. So then he'd move home till he could find a new place to live. And so that was very much home for him. And then his mom didn't sell that house for, I think, like another 10 years after we got married. So, like, the concept of somebody having a home that is a house that is the same house for 37 years, like, I can't even fathom what that would be like. Um,
I have a question for you on that actually.
yeah.
So, um, I had a girlfriend. Uh, I'll be celebrating the first year since her passing in next month.
Oh,
But
okay.
she grew up. So I live uh, in the town next to Plymouth, Massachusetts.
Okay.
Plymouth is known for as America's hometown. That's their
Yeah.
tagline. It sucks. It's dumb. But um, she when we met and I was telling her like all the places that I've lived. She was like, "Did you really?" You know, and I was like, "Well, well, yeah. Do you really speak all those languages?" It was like, "Yeah." And then, but it was very difficult for her to grasp
Mm,
when we first met because she grew up here all her life, and she grew up in
yeah.
Plymouth, right? So for 41 years, this
Wow.
was her. She grew up in the same house,
Wow.
and I've always been envious of that.
Mm,
Like yes, my growing up overseas was
mm,
was fun.
hmm
It had its advantages,
hmm
but I always envied people that grew up in one spot.
hmm
Do you ever feel that way, or have you ever felt that way?
Oh gosh, what a great question. I think we probably should talk about the advantages and the disadvantages of um, living like we've lived life. Because I think there are huge advantages, and there are some significant disadvantages. And so I remember so I moved back here for grade eight, spent 1 year living with my uncle and aunt, going to a school near their place. When my mom and dad came back, I spent 1 more year there. And then guess what? We moved to a different city, different high
Mm,
school. And so moved to a smaller town where most people in that town had lived there and grown up there their entire life. And so I show up on the first day of grade 11 knowing not a soul. And there are literally kids that were in kindergarten together in the class. And so, yeah, there are moments like that where these people have history and stories that go so far back, and I have no part of those. And there are very few people in my life that have that kind of longevity. I mean, now I'm 56, and so I now have friends that I have known for like 51 years. But they haven't been alongside me every single step of the way. We've, lived apart for parts of those times. And so, yeah, I think there are moments where, and actually, it's funny as you were asking the question, what I thought of was a samovar. Do you know what a samovar is?
I should, but I don't.
There's no reason you should, only if it's come into your orbit. So a samovar is it's essentially like a tea service from Russia. And it's like a jug with a spout, and you make your tea in it. And, in Russia, I've been told that every family has a samovar. And so, one of the things that I found with my family history of being refugees, being immigrants, we don't have a lot of like physical family history. So like we don't have houses that have been in the family forever. We don't have furniture that's been in the family forever. And so I think that's kind of where I really felt it was just like we have very little that has longevity. So my mom just moved into assisted living a couple of weekends ago and of course had to like downsize her apartment from 3 bedrooms to one small bedroom. And so one of the things that got passed on to me was the family samovar.
Hmm.
That, and I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I just pronounce it as how I've seen it written. But it was my grandma had a twin sister, and when my grandma and grandpa left Russia, a lot of families that wanted to leave during those years weren't able to get out. And then, of course, things got really locked down and they didn't get out until like the 70s is when we started having contact with some of those family members again. And so my grandma and her twin sister never saw each other again. And so this was my grandma's twin sister's samovar from Russia. And
Were they
so
identical twins?
I think so, but my family's kind of weird about those kinds of things. Like you'll hear things like, "Oh, they were identical until they weren't." And you're like,
Oh,
"That's not how it's not how it works." But it's okay. We got it. They looked the same and then they didn't. So I'm not sure. I think they were identical, but I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, so it was kind of like having that piece felt kind of like what I imagine it might feel like to have rootedness in a place for so long, you know? Yeah.
the next natural question is, would you, at least for this is a
Mm.
question I keep asking myself, is like, would I trade anything in for that rootedness? Would I would I
Mm.
would I give would I give my past up uh
Yeah.
so I could belong somewhere for the I'm
Mm.
41 this year too, and it's like, would I trade
Okay.
that for, and like, as much as I want, as much as I envy that in people, I wouldn't trade my growing up
Mm.
overseas for anything. Um,
Yeah.
and it's kind of a weird dichotomy because I think, to your earlier kind of point of like we should talk about the advantages and disadvantages. Uh,
Yeah.
I think there are a lot more pluses than
I
disadvantages.
agree.
Like I got the opportunity to learn multiple languages,
Mm.
and if I remember correctly, you're a psychologist, right? Or you're
I'm a clinical therapist. Yeah.
um I read somewhere interesting that, as when people do that code switching from one language to another, their
Mm.
personality actually changes
Oh, interesting.
to fit the culture,
Okay.
and like all like, and that's kind of interesting. It's like how what so it's like I'm a different version of me in Spanish than I am in French,
Mm.
than I am in Turkish, than I am in Italian. And
What language do you think in?
you should read my latest essay on that.
I was starting to read it and I ran out of time. Darn it.
Yeah. Um,
Okay, I'll go back and read it later.
um, it depends. I think in the
Okay.
language I'm spoken to. Or
Interesting. Okay.
so, but if I'm by myself,
Yeah.
it's 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 a fusion between English and French.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. So, I mean, I don't, I wish I had five languages. I think that's really amazing. I only have two. If you count understanding Low German as, it's a dialect. Some people argue it's a language. It's not really yet. But anyways, um, I, I find that it hit me when I was, I think, how old would I have been? 34. My husband and I were given a trip to anywhere we wanted to go because we had a family member that had some airline miles. And so he was like, I've never been to Europe. I want to go to Europe. So we went to Europe and visited some family in Germany. They were actually his family, but they all thought they were my family because I'm fluent in German. And I had to say, no, 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 I'm the in law. He's actually the one that's related to you. But I hadn't really thought about like what language I think in until I was in Germany. And I spoke fluently. I navigated our way through, hotel bookings and whatnot. And I remember we were probably about 7 days in, and we had arrived in Munich, and we didn't realize that it was a holiday. So we hadn't booked ahead, so we didn't have a place to stay. So we literally got off the train and started doing a loop around all the different accommodations to see if we could find somewhere. So I'd walk in, I'd speak German, I'd ask them if they had accommodations. The answer was no, we'd continue. And so feeling very like exhausted by the time we got to like the fifth place. And so I walked in, and all I could think is, I cannot say another word in German. And so I said, do you have any rooms available? And he said, oh, yes, we do. And I said, oh, great. And so we got booked in. And then the next morning, I'd had a good sleep, and I came down and I spoke German to him. And he was like, what? You speak fluent German. And he's like, why didn't you speak German last night? And I said, my head was so tired. And so as I was like making sense of that, I was like, oh, there was a point, I think I think it was probably around age 16 where I had always thought in German and translated from English into German. I don't think I have an accent, so I don't think I speak with an accent, but there were many, many years where I actually thought in German and translated. And then at some point, actually, probably was even before 16, but at some point, that switch happened where I started thinking in English. And so just realizing like how exhausting that was for me. So I sometimes work with clients who English is their second language, and it's been kind of neat because I've been able to like validate that for them when they're like, I'm just so tired. Like by the time I'm done my workday, I have no energy left to do the things that I want to do. And I'm like, well, yeah, because I know how exhausting it can feel in your head when you're learning a new language and that's not the language you think in. So it's interesting, like with you having five languages, it sounds like there still are two that you feel kind of most comfortable in your head.
Which is weird because it's weird that French has taken over.
Hmm.
We're it, I learned French later in life. I was
Hmm.
like uh so I was in fourth grade when I learned French. So I grew up
Okay.
speaking English and Spanish, right?
Oh, that is really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what what had ended up happening was I moved to when I moved to Madagascar, I had well, first of all, I had moved there engaged to someone
Hmm.
whose first language was French. So
Okay.
it it kind of took over like
Yeah.
my entire sense of being, right?
Yeah.
Not only was I speaking it at home, like
Yeah.
I was speaking it uh at work, and then
Right.
even when I moved uh back to the US, I was still speaking it at home. I was
Hmm.
for my work, they because of my French, they assigned me the French portfolio. So sometimes I would go
Ah, okay.
months without like I was living in the US, but I
But
would go
not
months
speaking
not
English.
speaking English. And
Wow.
so it it took over my entire life. So
Yeah.
like I I'll catch myself running around like so much so that uh when we first moved to there was a time when we went to get our car fixed, and
Okay.
the guy fixing our car, he was Dominican. And so I started speaking to him in Spanish, and all of a sudden he like glazed over on me. I'm still talking, and I'm like, I'm telling him all the things we need to do and everything, and like how much it's gonna cost. And my wife at the time was like,
You're
Chris,
speaking
you've been
French.
speaking French to him. And I was like, and I didn't even notice the switch. Like,
Yeah.
uh, but like, it's not that my Spanish is terrible. I mean, like, it's the language you speak amongst my family. Uh,
Yeah.
you know, so
You
it's,
you actually make me feel much better now because when I said like, yeah, I did speak Spanish when I lived in Mexico and then I moved back and I had to forget it because I had to do French in school and I I could not keep the two languages straight, and I couldn't even remember what language I was speaking anymore because they're
mhm.
so similar and yet different. Um, and so I would like my writing and my speaking would be half and half. It was like half Spanish, half French. And so just hearing you like as fluent, like your first language being one of your first languages being Spanish and struggling with that actually is like super validating. I'm like, okay.
And I got my dog in Madagascar, my
Yeah.
German Shepherd, and I'll walk around the house talking to her like part in French, part in English, and like we trained her in English because we didn't want the Malgache to like
Hmm.
call her over because
Yep.
they had this weird thing about poisoning dogs, so
Ooh.
yeah we didn't want her, to
Yeah.
protect her. We didn't want her to like approach strangers. So anyway, and then when we moved here, I just started speaking to her in French because I didn't want her going to strangers here. Uh,
So
so
she's bilingual as well. Awesome.
yeah, so it's kind of funny, like, 'cause I get another question gets like, what dog does or what language do you speak to your dog? I was like, she understands both,
Yeah.
but
Well, ironically, I think my dog probably does understand both my languages, but I only speak English to him because he's actually an import from Germany. So,
hmm,
yeah.
I have a question for you. Kind of like
Yeah.
popped in my head. I really hate the question, "Where are you from?" And I think
Hmm.
largely because it's so complicated for me, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I I reflect on this a lot. I There's a version of our story of people who grew up like us that we tell because it sounds easy, it sounds coherent,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And there's and then there's the version that actually happened, um,
Right. Yeah.
which is usually stranger, right? It's usually messier and much less interested in narrative elegance, right?
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Um, so like how do you when someone asks you like where are you from or like how do you tell your story
Hmm.
or yeah, so how do you tell your story about how you grew up?
Okay, so I'll answer that in a minute. My first thought, because my brain does this, was we need to come up with better questions to ask each other when we meet each other, right? Like some of those questions we ask each other are really weird. As to how I answer that, um, I guess it depends on the situation. Like I tend to I tend to be very open, sometimes maybe naively so, about who I am and where I'm at with things. So if somebody's just wanting like the quick answer, I'll say, well, I've lived in a lot of different places. I guess mostly I'm from, BC, Canada. Or if it's more like, where are you from? Just a like one word answer, then I'll say Canada because I would say my deepest sense of allegiance is actually to being a Canadian. Um, but if
I
somebody's like, oh, like, where are you from? Where were you born? Have you lived here your whole life? Like those kinds of questions, then it's always like, well, it's a little complicated. Do you want the simple story or do you want the whole story? Right. So, um, what about for you? Because for you, like, I feel like you've got an even broader experience of multinational than I do.
I hate that question mainly because mainly because I don't know how to answer it most of the time.
Yeah.
It's my go-to is like you, I have a deep sense of allegiance to Massachusetts. So
Hmm.
I just usually say Boston if I'm talking to an
Okay.
American,
Got it.
right?
Yeah.
Um, I it's funny when I speak to someone new overseas like that's overseas. If we're like let's say the French, if I'm speaking to someone in French and I just met them and we're talking, that question doesn't come up right away.
Interesting. Yeah.
It it's usually like after like 30 minutes of us chatting
Hmm.
that they're like, "So, what part of France are you from?" Like they'll ask me,
Hmm.
and I'm like, "Well, I'm not French." And they're like, "Oh, so you're Canadian?" No,
Oh,
I'm
I love
not.
it.
Uh, and I was like, then I have to be like, I pause because then it's like, well, I'm American, and then
You can see
this
their
usually
brain
this
just
u-
going,
this usually happens at in airports, and like it. I hate traveling through Paris because I'll go to check in and I'm talking to the flight attendant, and I make a lot of dad jokes. I'm there like trying to be funny, and especially making fun of the stupid questions that they ask you, like did you pack your bag yourself, like where you headed, and this and that. So I'm like answering these all in French until they say, you know, uh, like your passport, sir, and I give them my American passport. Two things happen. One, they immediately switch to English, which is
Oh,
annoying.
interesting. Yeah, because
It
you've shown that French is actually very comfortable for you.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
they switched to English, and then the first couple of times it happened, I was like, okay, I answered back in English because it's like if you I'll respond in whatever language you talk to me in.
Yeah.
And but I as it started happening more often, I've gone to the effort of saying, let's keep it the French, right? I don't want everyone to know I'm American, like, and then they'll like switch back to French,
Oh,
but
so they do
it's
switch back. Okay,
yeah,
well, that's good.
because it's like just because my passport says I'm
Mm,
American, like, why'd you switch to English? Like
yeah.
my accent does not change. Hang on, my mom is my mom is watching my dog upstairs, and she's like, I'm heading out
Ah,
now. So anyway,
okay.
um, yeah, but it's going back to it, it's really funny for me, or really interesting to me, when I'm talking to someone who's foreign. It does how
Hmm.
much slower it is for that conversation to categorize me into a specific
Hmm.
nationality.
Interesting.
Whereas here it's
Yeah.
one of the first immediate questions that we get as
Yeah.
Americans. It's like
Yeah.
if it usually the first question is, what do you do and
Yep.
where are you from?
Yeah.
And that's how we do small talk here. It,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, I find like some of the questions that we ask are just often the least interesting things about us. I mean, sometimes it can be like the most interesting thing about us, but that question of like, what do you do? Um, my work past has been an interesting mix of things as well. And for a number of years, I actually didn't work much, and I spent a lot of time homeschooling my kids. And so I learned to get creative in my answers. So like when somebody would say, "Oh, like where are you from?" I'd be like, "Well, I'm a little bit from a number of different places. But if you want to know where I live right now, like this is where I live." Or in terms of the like, "What do you do?" I'd say, "Well, in my paid work, I do some bookkeeping and I'm a counselor. And in my unpaid work, I do lots of bookkeeping. I do lots of tracking of things. I am a taxi driver. I am a teacher. I am like just listing off all the things because I don't know. I feel like sometimes we assign value to the wrong things. And so we kind of start with our value questions of what do you do and where are you from? When that maybe isn't the most interesting thing. Like when you first asked that question, I was like, maybe we need to have like a better get to know you question that's like, what's something interesting about you that you'd be willing to share with me?
so and I think it also depends on your background, how you approach that question. Because I remember when I
Mm.
first got that question, um, it like literally was when I moved back to the DC area, and
Okay.
I was at a bar meeting with a old. I was waiting for an old graduate school friend of mine, and someone
Okay.
asked me, "What do you do?" And I said, "Oh, that's a cool question. Like, well, it depends. Like, if it's like a weekend, I like to go hiking, and I have a German Shepherd, and but in the weekdays, like it depends, uh, like I usually like read books, I play guitar, and they're like, 'No, what do you do?' And I was like, 'Well, I just told you what I do.'"
You didn't specify that you meant what do you do for work, right?
Yeah, and it's like,
Oh,
so then the question was, do you work? And I was like, oh yeah, yeah. It's like that's what I meant. Like, I'm like, oh, and
yeah.
I, I I initially thought that this person's an asshole, but I kept getting that from my fellow Americans. Like, what do you do? What do you do? What do you do?
Wow.
And then I thought that the weirdest thing was, at least in the DC area, if you weren't a doctor,
Hmm.
politician, or lawyer, the conversation almost ended immediately after that.
Wow.
And then that was very difficult for me to handle as a
Hmm.
American coming back, because like, why is there so much priority in what I do
Yeah.
for a living? And
Yeah.
like I was a young guy. I was in almost 30, starting my
Yep.
career here in the US, and it's like, okay, I'm in finance, still a respectable thing, and
Yep.
but then I had to learn the hard way that that's how DC people are. If you're not a lawyer,
Hmm.
politician, or doctor, they want nothing to do with you. And it's like,
Hmm.
what can you do for me attitude. Um,
Oh, okay.
yeah, so to get a friendlier reaction from people, I had to leave the DC area. Um,
Hmm. Okay.
yeah, I was still working there, but I moved to Baltimore and then to a
Okay.
small town called Pasadena, Maryland. And if you have not heard of Pasadena,
I've only heard of Pasadena, California, so
yeah,
yeah.
people were a lot nicer there.
Oh.
But it's, but then okay. So another question for you is, I found that sometimes the hardest part is not surviving our kind of lifestyle. It's updating it. Uh,
Hmm.
because like that old explanation can become
Hmm.
like emotional furniture. Uh,
Yeah.
and so like, do you constantly find yourself having to update your story depending on who you're talking to?
Oh gosh, that's a really good question. Um, I guess, I mean, I feel like in life we're constantly updating our story, right? Like, um, I mean, I look back to like 5 years ago and just think about how much I have changed in the last 5 years. And then, the 5 years before that, how much I have changed in those 5 years. And so I think for me, it feels kind of like threads woven together. Like the thread doesn't change, but maybe its prominence in the fiber just is less easily apparent the bigger the weaving gets. And so I feel like all the different pieces that I bring into my life get woven into the new fabric. And so, yeah, I think the answer is yeah, I'm constantly updating my story. That is like one part of my story. And like you, I mean, you said earlier, I wouldn't trade my experiences for anything. I would echo that as well. Like where I've lived, the experiences I've gone through have deeply shaped me. Um, and I mean, there's some really horrible things in my experience that I wouldn't, I would never have chosen them, and I wouldn't say I want to go through them again. But I'm also extremely grateful for the learnings that I got out of them. And so, the experience of moving countries and never feeling like I belonged, there's a lot of that really shaped who I am as a person and who I am as a therapist. And yeah, so I think the story, I think if we're wise, the story is constantly updating and changing, because that feels like growth and continued learning.
What do you think are disadvantages for the way we've grown up?
I think like you, I think there's less disadvantages than advantages. Um, I mean, disadvantages. I sometimes miss out on things that are like really obvious to other people. And I wrote a little piece a little while ago about, actually, I think it was like a week and a half ago, on like some of the things that I totally missed growing up. Like I was in my 20s and I was at college and I was in the washroom and my friend was in the stall next to me. And all of a sudden I said out loud, "Oh my goodness, Lego my ego means let go of my ego." And my friend started laughing, like, "What do you mean? You just now figured that out?" And I'm like, "Yeah, because it was just, I was thinking in German and it was a fun little rhyme that happened to be part of a commercial, thought nothing of it." And so I often feel like both in German and in English and in life in general, I feel like I sometimes miss out on the jokes because I just don't get them. And so I often, will have my partner kind of proof some of my stuff to make sure that I'm not inadvertently saying something that I don't intend to say. Um, so I feel like, that's one of the things that feels like a disadvantage. Again, that like having a place that feels like, I've gone into friends' homes who have like a heritage home that has been in the family for like three generations. And there's something really beautiful about that historical rootedness. And so I think that to me feels like a loss that I don't have because of how I've grown up. Um, and I guess probably, well, yeah, again, I don't know if that feels like a loss. Some of the, you've grown up with the same people your entire life. To me, that actually feels limiting rather than expansive. I kind of like all the various people that I have in my life, and I have so many people that are so different in so many ways, and there's such richness that comes from that. So while some people might say, not knowing a steady group of people your entire life is a loss, I actually kind of feel like that's a gain. So I don't know, are there any others that you can think of?
I think this is more personal to me,
Yeah.
but uh, I find that I'm really bad at keeping in touch with
Mm,
with others, be, mainly because, and I think this is common for people that grew up like us. It's people. There's a perspective of the people around us become replaceable, and
mm,
uh, especially if you've grown up as an expat like I have, it's
mm.
one of the cool advantages is like you can communicate and talk to anybody, right?
Yes.
Uh, but because of when you would come in or they would come in, like you breeze through and develop relationships so quickly, but once
Mm,
they're gone, and that's it.
mm.
So it's kind of like out of sight, out of mind, and you
Okay.
just kind of focus uh in the people in your immediate orbit that you get to see every day. But
Yeah.
someone leaves that orbit, like they're gone forever, right? And
Okay.
I think at least, and so that's kind of a common perspective of is like
Okay.
of kids, especially like depending on how long you've grown up in this kind of world.
Yeah.
That I think that that's a major disadvantage is like being
Yeah.
really bad at keep. So, and I think I think it's a generational issue. It's people that are on the time frame where when you and I grew up living overseas because well I grew up the internet was just being invented. I was
Mm.
starting to learn how to use the internet in 1994 and
Mm-hmm.
Yahoo
Me
was a
too.
thing and it was like really
Yep.
um and like now there's Facebook, now there's WhatsApp, people can
Yeah.
uh but we didn't have that. Uh,
Oh, yeah.
and so I think,
I,
yeah,
yep.
I think that that's kind of like a disadvantage for
Yeah.
me at given that kind of context. But
Yeah.
since the advent of things like Facebook, I've been able to reconnect with a lot of my high
Cool.
school, or not high
Yeah.
school friends, but like kids in middle school, and uh
Oh, cool.
but it's still kind of difficult to reach out.
Yeah. Well, and I find too, like I've often had that thought of, I wonder how different it would have been if we had had some of the ways of staying in touch that we do now. Because so by personality, I'm a bit of a collector. I go to the beach and I collect rocks. I seem to collect friends. I collect, I'm subscribing to everything on Substack right now. Like I collect things. I love that. And so, staying in touch with people, I'm a little unique in that I'm still friends with my best friend from grade one. And I
Hmm.
still have, a friend that I met when I moved back from Mexico who was a good friend of mine in junior high. And I still regularly get together and travel with some of my girlfriends from high school. So I've like collected people in all the different parts of my life. Even with that being like my thing, there are people that were actually really meaningful to me that I've lost touch with. And some of them, like, I've just never been able to reconnect. Like, I
Hmm.
know their name, but their name is general enough that there are many of them around. And so haven't been able to find them. And I do feel like that's a loss sometimes where I'm like, oh, I still think about some of them. I'm like, oh, I wonder how she's doing, or I wonder how he's doing, or last I heard this is where they were, and just yeah, like the losses around that. So I get that, and I think yeah, it could be very different for people growing up in overseas locations these days because we do have so many more ways of staying connected, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, it's I just another weird disadvantage I see, and I think this is very America specific.
Okay.
Uh, you learn there becomes that scarcity moment of uh like I don't know how long I have with this person. So
Mm,
and they're really cool. So you go from like 0 to 60
mm.
in the first like hour that you meet. Like all of a sudden you know each other's life stories,
Entire
and like
life.
you get deep really quick, right?
Yeah.
Because so you learn how to you miss the small talk.
Yeah.
You psychologically you break that small talk and you go straight into the like depth conversations.
Yeah.
And here in the US, I remember I that's one of the hardest things I have trouble adapting to,
Mm,
because like I I every time I return it's like I go 0 to 60 right away, and it
mm,
makes a lot of the Americans uncomfortable.
mm,
And it's like, oh, this guy's sharing too much information, or I would, or if I have a friend coming to visit from overseas and they do the same, like my friend will text me like, man, she's oversharing, and
mm,
it's
mm.
I think a disadvantage is like when do we shut that off? Like, how do we shut that off in context dependent, right? Or
Mm.
when and I have to be and we have to be super. A lot of my friends that are third culture kids like us, they have to really be mindful of when to turn that switch on and
Mm.
off, because otherwise the default is let's just leave it on and let's just who needs
Right.
small talk anyway. And I hate small talk, and
Yeah.
I don't do it very well, and America thrives on small talk.
Uh,
And that's how conversation ends when people talk about the weather. That's
yeah.
like that's like a conversation
Drives you
ender.
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. It's interesting because I find that I gravitate towards people who are willing to have deeper conversations. Like, I can do the small talk, and if I sometimes I remember to, sometimes I forget to. Like sometimes I have to go back, even in emails, and I have to reread emails, especially when I'm sending out client emails, and I have to like read them and go, wait a minute, did you actually have a proper greeting or did you just get right down to it? And it's like, no, I have to remember to like have that little softening sentence to yeah. So I find, uh, and I feel like it's like the older I get, the less tolerance I have for anything that's not real. And so, yeah, if I'm gonna, hang out with a group of people that I don't know, um, this version of me is gonna show up. And if they don't like it, then they might not be the people for me to hang out with. But
Hmm.
that's been a bit of a journey as well of just like, you know what, I can be polite and I can be kind, but I don't actually have to continue the conversation. I could just end it and move on. Um,
Hmm. You kind of sparked a question in my head. Um,
sure.
because always interested in that um the gap between what we inherit
Mm,
uh and what we choose, right?
mm-hmm,
So family gives
mm.
us one draft, right?
Yep.
We have grown up overseas as our draft, but then life starts revising without permission,
Mm.
right? And so what feels inherited to you, and what do you have to consciously reinvent?
Oh, oh, uh, yeah, that's a good one. I was just doing some writing on that, and I just finished a couple of days of a symposium that I'm taking part in, and part of it is educational learning and part of it is experiential. And so we did some writing and journaling exercises using two-handed writing. So our
Were you
dominant
writing with both
hand,
hands?
yeah, so your dominant hand asks a question and your non-dominant hand responds. It was a therapeutic technique, so there was kind of a very specific topic that we were given, and so I picked. I'm sorry that my camera's kind of jumping around a little bit. I'm
That's
trying to
okay.
hold it still, but my hands are not very steady here. Um,
Neither are
yeah,
mine
so
these days.
I picked. I have to make myself small. So thinking about what did I inherit in terms of family stuff, um, I was unpacking some of that. Yeah, like don't don't stick out. Don't take up too much air. Don't say anything that could be rude or hurtful. Blend in, like just a lot of that. And so I think that's a huge area where I've had to learn like I'm allowed to take up space. I'm allowed to say things. And like I'm pretty new to Substack. I just started in November. My coaches, I was working with two business coaches who kept encouraging me, like, you should do this, you should do this. And finally I did. And then, oh my gosh, like I feel like my brain is constantly firing. I have like so many notes everywhere where I'm like, oh, I want to write about this. Oh, I want to write about this. And I can't stop. And it's like this part of me that I've reconnected with that was when I take it back, I'm like, oh, I remember this. This was a really young part of me that liked adventure and liked creativity and that liked jokes, and it was hilarious how that showed up in the writing exercise. I my right hand said, tell me more about what it's like to not feel like you can take up. And then I ran out of room and I had to like write up space. And then I
Mhm.
wrote, oh my gosh, this is hilarious! Exclamation mark, underline, underline. And then I switched the pen over to my left hand. And what came out was, that was me. Haha. I like jokes and a funny little happy face. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that is a part of me that I've forgotten about. Like I was so serious and I had to be serious all the time and always, be careful of what I was presenting and to like be reconnecting with that. And so I think, part of what I'm choosing to lean into is just this, like when I said to you, yeah, sure, I'm willing to do a Substack Live, having zero idea what a Substack Live even was. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, there's going to be people watching us. But then I
That's
was
the
like,
part that
nope.
makes me nervous.
Yeah. But it's like, no, I can be brave. Like I can do this. I can do hard things. I can step into discomfort. Like it's by stepping into discomfort in ways that don't overwhelm that I learn and grow. And hey, I'm here for learning and growing. And so all of this is part of that. What am I stepping into that I'm choosing? And I think that that's probably the biggest piece that I can think of right now.
How do you think that growing up overseas uh made up or a component of your identity? Um,
Hmm.
and what part of that identity took the longest to become yours rather than just having it feel familiar?
Oh gosh. Do you have an answer for that one? That's a big question.
Um, it's um something I'm struggling with a lot because
Okay.
I don't know. Life of constant movement has always been familiar
Mm.
to me,
Yep.
but also that desire to feel rooted in one place
Mm.
also
Yeah.
feels very familiar, and it's it's kind of screwed up with my identity a little bit, or my the sense of
Mm.
identity, because like I I don't know where I belong,
Mm.
right? And I think
Yeah.
it's I feel like I'm part of this like missing middle of like
Mm.
I don't really belong here in this country. I
Mm.
even though I sound American, I have an
Yeah.
American passport, but
Yeah.
I'm also comprised of all the places I've lived and all the places
Yeah.
I've been,
Yeah.
and it's very and when I like bring in my experiences uh to my friends that have never left the state and
Mm.
talk about that, it really goes over their head. Like I watch them glaze over in
Mm.
real time, and it's
Yeah.
like, and it kind of frustrates me because it people like oversee, like if I'm looking at a situation and people overseas face similar issues than
Mm.
we do in the US, but
Yeah.
oftentimes they have better solutions, right?
Mm.
And when I kind of like tap into like, oh, I remember one time in Madagascar this kind of happened, and I think it would be a more simplified way to address this. They're like,
Yeah.
it's not the way they think, and
Yeah.
it and that kind of makes me feel like I don't belong here. But then
Yeah.
it's I don't know if you've ever had this experience in Mexico or anything, but like for me in places like Madagascar or Ghana, or when I've been to Mali or Senegal, I stick out like a sore thumb, and
Mm-hmm.
and people know when I'm not, like you'll walk like in Africa, there's different words for foreigner, and
Mm.
in Madagascar it's Vaza, and
Okay.
in Ghana it's Uroni, and
Mm-hmm.
it means white man, right?
Yeah.
And people know I don't belong there,
Yeah.
and and in Switzerland, it's, well, you're not Swiss, so like,
Mm.
yeah, you're not in our in group.
Right.
And 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 when I was in Turkey, I actually had a beard and looked Turkish. And if I didn't say, uh, I had a slight accent, so they thought I was Kurdish. So I didn't really talk
Okay.
much. They
Okay.
don't really like the Kurds over there.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah.
so I don't belong. I've always like felt that sense of not belonging
Mm.
anywhere, but
Yeah.
being part of the world. And it's like like how how does that really affect my sense of self?
Mm, yeah. Yeah, that's such a like it's interesting because when you said identity, I was like, I guess for me, I identity because so I mean, growing up overseas, I felt like I didn't fit when I came back. And I remember like one of the biggest ways in which I felt like I didn't fit was okay, so this is a complex web in my head. We grew up very poor, um, but we had a house and we had a car, and my mom and dad worked really hard, and they always paid our mortgage and they always put food on our table. And so we actually weren't that poor when you think of it. Um, they worked really hard. They were fortunate. They had a community around them that helped support them to be able to find places to work. Um, and so when we moved to Mexico, like I had always felt like we were like lower middle class here. Like I was very aware of that. I didn't have all the things my friends had. We shopped at the discount department stores on, Tuesdays when things were on sale kind of thing. Um, I wore hand-me-down clothes and shoes. We moved to Mexico and we're in this tiny little town and we are seen as millionaires. Like, and it was such a weird, like, what? We're wealthy? And then recognizing, oh my goodness, we are so wealthy compared to most of the people who live around us. Um, and so moving back to Canada with that awareness, like as a teenager, I just remember being deeply frustrated by the fact that people around me seemed so unaware of the rest of the world and so unaware of, like you said, the good things about the rest of the world, the suffering in parts of the
Mm.
world, and just how like they could seemingly just go on with their meaningless life and not pay any attention to it. And that was a really hard thing to grapple with. And I think it really added to my whole sense of I don't belong. So like here I am coming home, but home actually doesn't feel like home. And so I feel like that continued. Like it was only when I finally got to college where I started meeting, I always say like I met my people, but I mean one of my closest friends from my college days she's like a second mom to my kids. Um, she is when we met, both of us, and she didn't grow up overseas. She lived in one place her whole life, but she had a different way of looking at the world, and that totally drew me to her. I think in later years now we're realizing she's probably neurodivergent. And
Mhm.
so I'm like, okay, that makes sense. But I remember having this conversation with her where I was like, I've always felt like a duck out of water. Like I just don't belong. And her response was, quack, quack, like me too. And so, we were like, oh, we're both ducks out of water and we found each other. And so I feel like because I felt so disconnected, out of joint, not like I belong, that ever since early years, I've just looked for my ducks. And so my identity has been able to be very deeply rooted, not so much in what's going on around me, but what's going on deeply inside of me. Um, and so, like my husband, he was diagnosed as an adult after all our kids were as autistic and ADHD, and um, and our kids are all ADHD as well, and they're amazing, and they've taught me so much. And in a lot of ways, I feel like I've come home. Like this is a place where I'm allowed to fit just the way I am. I don't have to be a specific way. I can just show up really authentically.
I'm
And
ADHD too.
I know you are. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
I
So,
honestly, I feel like for me, that has been such a gift in my life is all these. people that also have felt a lot of their life like they don't necessarily fit. And but there's like a shared belonging, I think, that comes from that.
I think I find a lot of my sense of identity through language. Like,
Mm,
um, and it's something that I really I feel like it's a penance for me living here
mm,
in the South
mm.
Shore of Massachusetts. It's that I don't get me wrong, I love living here. Like it's like I'm back home, and I I am really lucky to be back home finally. But it's the moments of catharsis for me have always been in those small moments where um, I'm at uh, the my brother takes me to this grocery store at the other side of town. I normally would not go to that side of town. It's only because it's
Okay.
far.
Okay.
And um, but it's where all the Haitians work
Mm,
at that grocery
okay.
store, and it's just mi like one of the things I miss is seeing
Mm,
like something other than white. You know, for
mm,
first of all, like I grew up where like in a deep sense of diversity. Like yeah, there were white people. There
yeah.
were I grew up in Africa, so there was like the I was a minority there, but then there were
Yeah.
like Canadians, there were French, there were uh there was a lot of sense of richer multiculturalism, but then when
Mm,
it's like I can bump into a Haitian and just like speak French to them, and it's like
so cool.
yeah, and it's like uh it's it it's like the equivalent of like injecting myself with heroin. It's like
Mm,
like
a little
not that I
boost.
do heroin, but
Yeah,
like
yeah,
it's
no,
it's
but a little boost.
that kind of
Yeah.
feeling like um uh and or when I'm able to just connect with someone else in a different language.
Mm,
Um I was at a my local coffee shop not that long ago, and there was a Italian family like trying to order coffee, and
aw,
they're in their broken English trying to order Italian coffee. They're literally translating cafe italiano into English,
yeah.
and what they really mean is espresso. They want espresso. Uh,
Okay.
and and I eventually helped them out, but like even just speaking to them in Italian, it's like
Yeah.
and just having that deep sense of multiculturalism, like
Mm,
it's uh and it's just something I really miss. Uh
yeah.
Being DC was great because living around the DC area because you can go down the street and
Lots.
like hear Swahili, you can hear or Turkish, Latvian,
Yeah.
whatever the heck you want, and so I guess my sense of identity comes from that because that's how I grew up. It's like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
hearing multiple languages at once because that was my class. Like literally growing up, that was my classroom. I could hear like six
That's
or
so
seven
cool.
languages being spoken in my own freaking classroom.
Yeah.
And even though like um so that is that's been really hard for me to tone down here. Like
Yeah. Oh, I get that. Like as you're saying that, I'm thinking, well, because of where we live, like we live near the Vancouver area, and um, it's definitely very multicultural. And we have a lot of tourism. So you're constantly like, if you're on the SkyTrain or the bus or walking down the street, you definitely will hear different languages and see such a variety of people. And it is beautiful. There is something really lovely about that. Yeah, I find that's where, like, when I said, knowing the same people your entire life to me feels like something that's actually more hampering than broadening. I think it's for exactly that reason. Because I think, well, and this is why, like, when I said to you, I love people's stories, I think we learn so much from hearing other people's stories, and it broadens our understanding of things. It broadens our perspective of the world. I think it can broaden our compassion. It just adds so much value. And so I think, yeah, I totally get how hard it would feel to go from something very expansive and inclusive and diverse to something that feels, I don't know, maybe smaller or, um, yeah, less expansive.
And I think that's one of the largest benefits of growing up like we did. It it allows you to connect more to that human element with others, especially like
Yeah.
through language. Like it's one of the experiences. Like I remember, um, before Katie passed away, um,
Mm,
we we had gone to Boston for an event. It was a
okay.
candlelight concert. Uh,
Oh, cool. Yes.
it was around Halloween, so it was like the haunted music through candlelight. Um,
How fun.
and it I mean it was they played things like Thriller and like just like it
Nice.
was a string quartet. It was like really well done. Anyway,
Yeah.
um, we took a Uber back, right?
Okay.
And the Uber driver was was really struggling. Like he was trying to ask me where to confirm my address, right? If we were
Okay.
heading to Kingston, right? And I'm like, so I eventually like asked him like he was having a hard time understanding English, and I asked him like, where are you from? He said Kyrgyzstan,
Mm,
and and if you know anything about that region, Kyrgyz and Turkish are actually very similar. Much
mm.
like Spanish and Portuguese are similar.
Okay. Yeah.
Like it's like there's like 80 to 90% understanding if you like speak
Okay.
both languages, right? So I just started speaking to him in Turkish, and he just like lit up, like so,
Oh,
and he, and he's speaking to me in Kyrgyz, uh,
oh,
and
lovely.
Katie, who didn't understand this, she's like, "Oh, so he's Turkish? What part of Turkey?" I was like, "No, he's not Turkish. He's he's from Kyrgyzstan. Like he just told us he
Yeah.
was from Kyrgyzstan. Where is that?" And like I had to explain to her, and it's like so she didn't understand like how
Yeah.
languages shift, and it's like I and it kind of hit home for me how disconnected someone can be who grew up
Mm,
uh like she did from the rest of the world, right?
yeah.
And her
Yeah.
story is similar to countless of other Americans here or
Yeah.
countless of other people. And it kind of made me thankful that
Mm,
I'm able to like connect with this one person, right?
yeah.
And
Yeah.
even though through language, and I think that's why
Yeah.
language has become so much of my identity.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really interesting because my thoughts go to my own kids, and um, I always had dreams that, like, with my kids, we would, like, go somewhere and help do something in other parts of the world. And then that wasn't our reality. We had 4 kids in 5 years. They were super intense. Love them to bits, but they were not easy kids. And so our life was very different than I had envisioned it being. Um, and yet there's this part of me that didn't want them to grow up with this complete lack of awareness of the other. Um, and so, um, I would, in my dreams, I would fly my kids to Africa and to Europe and to Russia and to all the different parts of the world. But we didn't have the finances to do that. And so we did the next best thing. With my kids not being in school, we took a very non-structured approach to learning. The whole reason was I wanted them to never lose their love of learning. And So we were unschoolers, and so that is very much about like there's not curriculum that you follow. You
Mm.
basically live life and learn. And so every September, we would do a not back to school road trip and we would travel. And so we traveled partway across Canada, we traveled throughout our province, we traveled extensively through the US. Um, and so it was like, where could we go on a road trip and how far could we go? And wherever we went, like, what can we take in that exposes them to things? Like, my kids I remember they were like, why do people always say, oh, you had to go to a museum? They're like, don't people know how awesome museums are? Like they loved museums and historical sites and finding interesting science things to participate in, like, not the tourist version, but the who's the scientist that's out doing research that can, show us something about whales or whatever. And so it was, I guess in some ways it was my way of like exposing my kids to the world, even though I couldn't expose them to the world in the way that I had been. But it was that sense of like, I want you to meet people who are not exactly like you, people who, have been raised in different ways. And so sometimes we went to really small places and sometimes we went to really big places. And, wherever we went, they talked to people. They had lots of questions and would have interesting conversations. And so I feel kind of, as I'm kind of reflecting on it now, like very, very grateful for my kids and the way in
Mm.
which they've taken kind of the heart of what I grew up with and kept that, even though their actual physical experience is that they've only, I mean, three of them have lived in three houses in their entire life. The youngest has lived in two houses, and all of them have lived in the same house for the last 18 years, which is most of their life at this point. And so that is a very different experience what I have than what I had, and yet they are like very aware of the world and what's going on in the world and people, and so deeply attuned to people's stories. And interestingly, they have friends all around the world, which is really cool. And they've had some. They start off as friends online, and they've met up in real life. And so it's pretty cool. I feel like I got distracted, so you'll have to bring me back to wherever we're going.
What one of the things I am hopeful for,
Hmm.
or wanting, is I kind of loved the concept of the Peace Corps, right? You take
Mm.
these young kids, uh, kids,
Yeah,
and you
kids these
place,
days. Yeah.
yeah, you place them in a rural village
Hmm.
somewhere in the world, right?
Yeah.
And like they have to figure it out for 2 years,
Yeah.
and they have to go through intense language learning and language immersion, and they're kind
Yeah.
of like trial by fire thrown into some remote village somewhere. And I
Yeah.
think I think that that's what we need more of in our more
Hmm.
inter interconnected world now, of
Yeah.
those kinds of cultural exchanges, whether it be like your children do like online,
Yeah.
or actually if there's a version for high schoolers and
Hmm.
middle schoolers to just send them somewhere.
Yeah. Exchanges. Yeah.
Yeah, and have some, you know, a fan, kids coming from other cultures and countries here to stay with people. Um, like that's one of the that's one of the things that I'm like really thankful for. Having grown
Yeah.
up overseas, it kind of widens your perspective, and it I think it it makes you one aware of, especially of one's privilege, of like being American,
Yes.
and in some cases being a white American,
Yeah.
white like
Yeah.
it you know I got exposed to all those kinds. Like I lived in
Yeah.
countries where I was a minority, um and the kind of impacts that that has of like, oh
Mm.
well, you're white, you're wicked rich, so buy us everything, and
Yeah. Yeah.
it's like, and but then it's like how lucky, you get to see how lucky you are, uh to be an American, but also like
Mm.
you become more sensitive to the systemic issues
Hmm.
that keep other countries down, and then
Yeah.
you can relate it here of what's happened here in the U.S. of how
Yeah.
the systemic issues uh, have kept others down here, and
Yeah.
only like one group's, and I think it's a concept that's easier for people that grew up like us, an easier concept for us to grasp than
Yeah.
someone in West Virginia that lives out like
Yeah.
in a remote rural village in West Virginia, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't have
Yeah.
that kind of widened perspective. And I think if we're able to have these kinds of cultural exchanges, that kind of broadens your horizons,
Yeah.
and I think it could go a long way of bringing us together as a human species, right?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. Yeah. I just, there, it is so easy to get lost in um, things that are not human connection. And then when you have that human connection and you see the humanness of it, it changes things, right? Like you said, when you interact with people and you see what life is like for them, and it's so different than what you've experienced, and even when even when I am the minority in Mexico, how I'm still not the minority like people are the minority,
Mm.
because I still look different. And so just becoming so aware of the unchosen privilege, like this isn't something that we did or we earned or we deserve. It just happens to be this is how I look. Um, and yet, in some societies, this buys me privilege, which is crazy when you think of it. And so, if we can get past that part and just recognize like the common humanity with each one of us, right? It's really, really powerful. And I totally agree. I think we need to hear more from each other's hearts and get less stuck in the rhetoric that I find rhetoric just keeps us from seeing the person. Um, yeah.
And it was like something that used to like really frustrate the crap out of me. I remember my first job in Madagascar was working with this mining company, and
Mm.
like I went to some remote village. Like I went on my dirt bike, and I met up with my some of my colleagues there that were running a project, and um, I remember uh, a village like, so I'm dealing with people that are like the my local colleagues that were like super smart,
Mm.
well versed in their craft, and in terms of like we went to visit a project on fishery
Okay.
development, right? And this guy's talking, uh, and I'm just like, God damn, this guy knows his shit. And what the hell do I know about fisheries? I'm just
Right.
the finance guy here, right?
Yeah.
And then uh he's trying to teach them about life jackets and how when you go out
Mm.
there, like, use the life jackets, and they're not listening. And then one of them asked me like, uh or one of the villagers asked me about how to life jackets and the importance, and I just repeated what the guy said, and everyone put on their life
Uh,
jackets, and I'm like, I asked the guys like, why did they all do like listen to me?
mm.
Like I was like 28. I was like,
Right. I'm the least
I'm just a
educated person
dumbass kid,
here. Yeah.
right? Uh, and he's like, it's because you're white. You're a foreigner, and
Oh
they're gonna like,
gosh.
and it's like,
Yeah.
God damn it, like, like
Yeah.
I'm the dumb one here, and
Right. Oh
uh,
gosh. Yeah, like
and
privilege at play.
it
Absolutely.
it was like it's just because I went to like they they were more apt to listen to me because I got an American graduate degree,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
and like that that piece of paper doesn't it's just a piece of paper at the end of the day. Like these guys were so smart and their
Oh,
life experience like dwarfed mine,
right.
and they were more keen to listen to some dumbass kid
And I'm sure
with like little.
your degree was in life jackets, I'm sure.
No, it was in it just finance, and it's just I just play with
Yeah.
numbers, right?
Yeah,
I know
totally.
nothing, and it's it
Mm,
really kind of hit home for me that essence of privilege. Like for me, like my immediate takeaway from that is keep your mouth shut. Like don't
mm,
and and ask more questions than do talking because
yeah.
like it's subconsciously where like wherever you go, like people are gonna look at you a certain way and
Yeah.
either lessen what you have to say because of where you're from or
Mm,
put a lot of weight uh
mm-hmm.
to what you say because of where you're from or what you look like.
Yeah.
Uh and that's kind of annoying. And
Yeah.
how do, how do we get away from that uh in isolation? And I think that's why we kind of need to mix more. Uh
Yeah.
like so that we can just because I'm American and a white guy doesn't mean shit. It just means
Mm,
I'm an American and a white guy. Like it and yeah, I forgot where I was going with this other than we need to find a way to connect with each other at a much more
yeah.
deeper level than just with we're just I wish if I had a magic wand we could just connect via soul, right?
Mm, mm-hmm.
But I
Yeah,
don't.
it kind of it made me think like, challenge question. So, um, for anyone who's wanting to challenge themselves is like to think, where in my own life might there be somebody that I'm not really listening to, but that if I listened to them, I could learn something from them. Because it's interesting, like I'll have, couples come into my office and I'll say something and it will totally like, oh, yeah, yeah. And then, the other partner might say, I have told you this so many times. Like, why didn't you believe it from me? Why did it have to be this person that said it to you for you to believe it? And so it just makes me think like we probably all have people in our lives who are trying to tell us something and maybe we're unconsciously dismissing it, like not paying attention to it. So might be an interesting awareness just to like have like, is there
Is it
somebody that is, trying to share something or teach me something or tell me something that I'm not paying attention to?
makes me wonder why it's an innately human thing to for us to look at something that or makes it pick on something that can make us so divided, right?
Mm,
I I heard I've heard this several times as I grew up, like people like others who are similar to them, right?
mm,
And whether it be the way they think, the way they
mm-hmm,
speak, the way they look, it's like, but then we talk about the benefit of diversity, right?
mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's paradoxical because
Yeah.
if we normally gravitate to people who are like us
Mm,
and know the benefits of diversity, then why are we so hesitant
Mm.
to pick the option that would make us genuinely better?
Yeah. Well, I'd say discomfort is a big part of that, right? Like it's comfortable to go with something that is known and that is familiar. But putting ourselves in situations where it isn't necessarily comfortable and it isn't known, um, that brings up a lot of stuff, right? Like, oh my goodness, like I might not know what to do, or I might look stupid, or all those things, and yet, I mean, growth comes when we push into the uncomfortable, and not to a place where we're dysregulated and we can't handle it, but um, that like growth edge discomfort, right? Where when we are feeling a little uncomfortable, but we're okay and we know we can make it. Kind of like you and me hopping on this call today. Like this
Yeah,
wasn't like, oh yeah, this is totally comfortable. I can totally do this. This was
it's so
definitely
structured.
so structured, so organized. Yeah, we knew exactly what we were doing. But at the same time, like this is a growing experience and it's been great. Like I've really appreciated the conversation and it's been a lot of fun just talking. And so, yeah, we've always got opportunities to lean into something that's a little uncomfortable, pushes us a little bit beyond our skills and our ability, forces us to learn something new. And I think if we have openness to push into that, yeah, we things things can change and grow. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think like moving across cultures, across languages is deeply uncomfortable, right?
Yes,
Uh,
it is.
it and unfortunately for me, it was
Mm.
forced upon me, right?
Mm.
I didn't choose that.
Yeah.
Um, and so one of the things that I don't know if you've ever read the book Third Culture Kids, um,
I have
but
not. I've heard of it, but I have not read it. Yeah.
um, one of the things that they talk about the commonality for people that are third culture kids, like it the de I wrote about the definition not that long ago, but it's essentially the third culture kid is someone a person who grew up in a country that's not of their parents' origin, right?
Yeah.
Um, and i- one of the commonalities that they have, people that grow up like us, is that, they stop and observe first. They study
Mm.
first, right?
Yeah.
Um, because that is adaptation, that is
Yeah.
survival, right?
Yeah.
And maybe that's what we need to do in today's
Mm.
society is like get thrown in uh to uncomfortable situations, like be
Yeah.
sent somewhere where people aren't like us, live in a community where people aren't like us, so that we can shut up, listen, and observe and
Hmm.
grow from that, right?
Yeah.
Because it'll
Totally.
it, it'll I mean, like things can go wrong very easily if you
Mm.
don't do that. Case in point,
Hmm.
um, I had just gotten I had just gotten Shadow in Madagascar, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I grew up in a region of the island where dogs were very taboo, which is very hard for me to understand because, well, I'm, I'm an animal lover, but uh, like, who doesn't like dogs and why is it taboo, right? Uh,
Right.
and so, but I didn't that I could grab, I could understand, but I was relatively new that I didn't understand the nonverbal communication, right?
Okay.
And if I had spent enough time like observing, I would have learned, but I needed more time. But
Okay.
this fisherman comes up uh, with his big tuna, and my sliding glass door was open. He's walking into the He's in their yard walking to the door. My German Shepherd looks up, runs out, barking, right?
Okay.
And the guy drops his fish. I mean, a German Shepherd barking at you, running at you, and barking at you anywhere in the world, you're gonna stop and freeze, right?
Right.
Um,
Yes.
um, and so he drops his fish and immediately picks up a rock, right? And I'm like chasing after Shadow, and I get in between him and the dog, right?
Oh,
Because I didn't want him to throw a rock at my dog, but B, if I
yeah.
knew she was gonna bite him, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't want that to happen. And
No.
so the intention was like, don't throw a rock at my dog because I don't want you to get bit. You know,
Yeah.
that's just and so he was getting angry at me.
Hmm.
Uh, and I was speaking to him in French. He didn't speak French. He only spoke Malgache. So he's talking to me in
Okay.
Malgache. I'm speaking to him in French, and I'm kind of, kind of like, you can't see my hands, but like going like this, like just go away. Like just keep
Yeah.
walking, and that's what you do. I didn't know this at the time, so he's ready to punch me and
Oh
square in the face,
no.
and
Oh
I'm like,
no.
I in my head, I'm just like, I'm just trying to protect you, bro. Like,
Right.
and I'm bracing for impact, right?
Yeah.
And we had a guard, and he like runs up. He sees the confrontation, and he says something, and uh, like the fisherman eventually storms off, right?
Okay.
And the guard's like, Mr. Chris, he was very upset with you, and I was like, why?
Yeah.
Like, uh, he's like, well, you were defending the dog.
Mm.
And I'm like, well, no, I was like mainly protecting him because I didn't want him to get bit.
Right.
He's uh, but he's like, well, he saw it as you, first of all, you protecting him, the dog. And that we don't do that here. We don't protect dogs. So you
Wow.
were, essentially
Being disrespectful.
saying, that he's lesser than a dog.
Oh gosh.
And I was like, oh, fuck.
Oh,
And to
that's not what
compound
I
the
was going for.
and to
Yeah.
compound the problem, uh, that the way I
The
was
hand
telling him to like
motion.
keep walking, is the way they shoe dogs.
No.
And
Oh no.
that's when
Oh
I like
no.
understood, like, this is why he was getting mad at me. This is why he was about to
Right.
punch me in the face. And I would have
Yes.
I would have wondered why the hell,
Why?
right?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and um, it's but people uh that grow up like us can go and study these kinds of situations on their own and learn different kinds of perspectives and like kind of absorb
Yeah.
different ways of thinking. And and I think that pause and reflection is is like really good for us because it allows us to put ourselves in other people's shoes, right?
Yeah.
And and I eventually made friends with the fisherman. He like lived a couple
Nice.
houses down, but
Okay.
it involved me buying him a cow. Uh
Okay.
and because he felt personally insulted, and
Yeah.
and the way you traditionally solve that kind of problem is you buy them a
You
cow.
buy cow.
Yeah, and
Lovely. Yeah.
I was like, I've never bought a cow before. I mean, it was only $150, but like
Yeah.
if I could make amends, then like, but
Uh,
and I also bought all my fish from him too, so it worked out.
nice.
Yeah.
Well, if you want to make amends with me, buy me chocolate. I'll take chocolate. But it actually made me think of something you asked earlier when you were talking about like which parts of the cultures that you lived in formed your identity. And part of part of my thinking, and I didn't say it at that point, but it kind of connected for me, kind of round circle right now, is like the families that we come from are a culture. And
Hmm.
and Like so much of what we bring from our families of origin, from our experiences growing up, is filtered through those lenses. And so I think as people, it's very natural to assume that because we look kind of similar, we've got similar face colorings, therefore we must all be alike. And I think when someone looks visibly different, it's easier to recognize, oh, they're going to be different. But really, that willingness to learn what something means in somebody else's context that we have to do when we go overseas, I think is hugely relevant to everybody's life. Like, my partner and I, when we got together, we came from families that in family background were actually very, very similar. In fact, my mom was volunteering as a candy striper at the hospital when his mom was in the hospital, and she remembers like, bringing food to his mom. And so there's like,
What's a candy striper?
oh, like just helping out, like a volunteer that helps out
Oh,
at the hospital kind of thing.
oh,
And so, there's like very similar, and yet our actual family cultures there were some really different things. There were some overlap pieces, but some really different things. And we've had to kind of figure out how to work with that and have essentially created a different culture for our kids that takes some things from his culture, some things from my culture, and incorporates them. And I think, if as humans we walked around seeing every person as coming from a different culture than ours, because really they do, even if they've grown up in the same place, it maybe would allow us to be a bit more curious about them rather than to make assumptions and then just act on the assumptions and believe they're true. I think assumptions is like one of the most detrimental things to relationship and connection, um, because we usually make assumptions and forget to check them. I think it's okay if assumptions come, but if we can be curious and say, so this is what I was thinking, like, is that actually what you meant? Or, yeah, it's interesting.
how many of us would be willing enough to do that though, to check our assumptions?
Hmm. Well, that's that growth edge again, right? That leaning into discomfort because it's not always comfortable, but it can be really eye opening for sure.
Hmm. Yeah, it's one of those things we won't solve today. It's kind of
Probably
enough.
not. It would be nice if in the period of a couple hours we could like solve the problems of the world, but yeah, probably not.
Hmm. Yeah, we should do this again. Oh,
Yeah, this
I
has
never
been
asked you,
great.
what do you write about?
Oh gosh. Yeah. So I was lamenting to my partner yesterday that like all the stuff I see is like find your niche and then write in it. And I was like, what if my specialty is being a generalist? And then we both started laughing and I'm like, I think that's going to be my next post because what do I write about? I write about everything that is in my head. And my head is totally inspired by people I talk to, things that I read, random thoughts that come into my head. And so my writing is a little bit about everything. And it really is like my handle is encouragement along the journey. And I think, as a human, I really want to leave whatever spaces I touch better than I came into them, both for myself and for the other. And so my writing, I try to write from a real place within me. I don't write as an expert. I just write as an expert on me. And a lot of times that expert on me is actually learning and becoming in the process. So um, there's a nice generalist kind of statement. uh,
I feel like I need to branch out a little bit.
hmm,
And I think I think since I started writing on Substack, I've focused on a couple things that, for better or worse, have kept me stuck, I think. Like
Hmm.
one of them is grief from
Yeah.
losing Katie. Uh,
Yeah.
Another has been um, trying trying to like crawl my way out of the psychological abuse I experienced before
Hmm.
that relationship.
Right. Right.
And but I think that there's a uh, and of course my dog. I write about my dog.
Hmm.
But I think it's who I was talking to my friend Julia today at the coffee shop. Like there's so much more else. There's so many other topics I could be writing about that is so relevant,
Yeah.
like multiculturalism um
Yeah.
and uh and what that means, or even the neuro spiciness of life.
Yeah.
Uh, like there's certain, but I think I've been so like hyper focused
Hmm.
um on those two topics that it has definitely been a source of like bringing me down a lot. You know, like when you look at
Hmm.
a brick wall, like all day,
Yeah.
it like consumes me.
Hmm.
So I need to branch out a little bit. And plus, if you talk about the same thing over and over again, people get bored.
Hmm. So you're saying it's good to be a generalist. Okay, I'll take that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah,
Thank you. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and I think sometimes too, like there are seasons in our life where we do kind of sit in a certain space for a while because it's what what we're walking through, right? And I think as long as, you know, as we continue to let it grow us and shape us, it actually helps us become who we are. Like I grief is a big part of my story. I've done some writing about it. I will probably write about it again. Um, I currently am not in an active grief place, but there have been some really significant losses in my life that um, those are those things where I say I wouldn't choose them again. I wouldn't ask for them. And yet they have 100% been foundational to me being who I am. The understanding that I have of grief in a very somatic, personal way, I would not have if I hadn't gone through those experiences. And so, you know, in those moments, like my brother, who was like, there were five of us in the family, and he was my oldest brother, and my brothers were like 11 and 13 years older than me, and this is my oldest brother, but he was like a best friend, a sister, a mentor. Like he was someone I really looked up to. I think personality wise, I'm probably most like him than anyone else in my family. And he died of cancer when I was 16.
No, that sucks. I'm sorry.
Yeah, yeah, and it was a significant loss, and so having to like process that, like I'm trying to find my journals from those days.
Hmm.
I haven't yet found them. I know they're somewhere, but I am sure that a lot of my writing will be just about that. And it was a lot. It was a lot of processing until I got to a point where I'm like, I'm kind of done with this. Like, not that it's not going to come back and not that I'm not going to work on it in other ways, but I'm done with sitting in the intensity of it.
Hmm.
And there was a season where I needed to sit in the intensity of it. And so I think it's really wise that you're listening to yourself and like just asking yourself that question of, do I still need to sit in the intensity of it? Or am I ready to kind of take a little peek at some other things? And it doesn't mean you won't come back to it. It doesn't mean that it's not part of your story. It just sounds like you might be moving towards a place where you're ready to kind of step back from it and look at it in a different way.
Do you watch the show Shrinking?
No, I haven't seen that one.
You would
Is it
like
good?
it.
Would I?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, it's
Shrinking. I'll remember that. Yeah.
it's about therapists. So
Oh,
hence
I've
shrink.
heard about it. I've heard
Yeah.
about it. Yes.
Uh,
Okay. No, I do need to watch it.
but um I the in this latest episode, Harrison Ford's character said a line that like really stuck with me.
Mm.
And uh, Jessica Williams' character, she used to be a in on the Daily Show way back when, but
Okay.
she's in this show too. Um,
Cool.
and she loses someone, and so
Mm.
she's grieving like one of her patients passed,
Mm.
and she's like back trying to get back to work, and Ford's character at one point says, "Oh, you're getting back on the horse," you know,
Mm.
and I was like, "That's what I'm trying to do is get back on the horse,"
Yeah.
and and the the line that he said at the end, uh, Jessica Williams' character wants to take some time off and like not deal with things, and he
Mm.
says, "The longer you're off the horse, the harder it is to get back on,"
Mm.
and it's like, God damn it, like. Uh, how do I?
Feel.
Yeah, it's like, and that's what I've been trying to do this past couple of
Mm.
weeks is like get back on the horse because I've let a lot of that like not not dealing with grief the way I
Mm.
should have, or not dealing with the past psychological abuse. I've like kind of like let that slide, and
Yeah.
it's so hard like to like undo that when I could have just had a more
Mm.
structured plan to do what I needed to do. But hey,
Yeah.
you live and learn.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes, I mean, I always think like we do the best we can in a situation given who we are at that moment and all that we know and are able to. And sometimes we look back and we go, "Oh gosh, I wish I had done that differently." But if we, I always say like if I were to give you a decision right now and I'd be like, "Here, decision A is a really good decision and decision B is a terrible decision." Um, like it's unlikely that you'd say, "Oh, I'm going to go with B." You'd be
Mm.
like, "Yeah, I'm going to go with A." And so I really truly believe that we do make the best decisions that we are able to each moment that we're in, and then we grow and we continue to change. And sometimes we look back and we go, "Oh, I wish I could have done it differently." Um, and that's okay. Like I think it's okay to have that longing, and at the same time to have compassion for that version of ourselves that did the best they could. In that moment, given all that we had gone through and who we were. So,
I'm making you do work now. Therapy.
well, yeah, this is, and I always say this is just me. This is how I show up everywhere. But yeah, this has been really great. I totally, yeah, thank you for like taking a risk. I mean, we had never even like had a conversation before this
I
other
know.
than like words on a page. So it's a big
Yeah.
risk to like show up and have a conversation. It's been
And
great.
I was like, who wants to be the next brave soul that wants to talk to me? I'll do it.
Me, me.
I
Yeah.
should have asked if you were sure, but I just went.
Well, and frankly, when you first, I'll be totally honest here. When you first put that question out in the chat, I was like, oh, how cool. Like he's going to do a little chat with a bunch of his subscribers. Like, yeah, I could totally do that. So that's what I thought I was signing up for. And then it very quickly became evident that I had no clue what I was talking about and that this was actually going to be very different. And then I made a conscious decision that, yeah, this is going to be uncomfortable, but you know what? This is good for me. So, yes, I am sure. But,
Yeah, it's and thanks for being courageous. Like I think I think I need to be more open on connecting with others. I'm very like I had no idea when I started Substack that people would even read
hmm,
me.
yeah.
Uh because it's like I sound like Eeyore giving a TED talk. Like it, it's
Gosh.
it's like who's gonna want to read me? And then
Yeah.
like I was like it, I've been obsessing of the numbers recently. Like I'm like close to
Hmm.
600, and it's like, God damn it,
Wow.
600 people are like close to 600 are interested in what I'm saying. Why? Like, I am Eeyore giving a TED talk. Come on, like
Yeah.
you guys have better things to read. And no, but it's like um
I think
it's
that should be your handle. I love that. Oh gosh.
um but yeah, I just want to start connecting with people who follow me in different ways other than just writing, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to be words on a page. Like
Yeah.
I want to kind of have the I want to I want to learn from others and
Hmm.
I've I've made a lot of meaningful connections with people on Substack. Like one I saw one of them sneak in. I don't know if she snuck back out. Lynn, she's towards the bottom there. Like
Okay.
uh I got to know her and um there's a there's a I have a Substack bestie um
Yeah.
who's also a therapist.
Yeah.
But so and her and I talk like literally every day. We go
Oh,
back
that's
and
so
forth,
cool. Yeah.
and she puts up with my dad jokes, which is good. Um, and so and I like it's kind of forcing me to develop new relationships so I can learn
Hmm.
from others because I think there's a benefit in I don't care where you're from, what you do, like
Yeah.
there's something I can learn.
Yeah.
So I hope I have 596 different conversations with all of my subscribers.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, my word going into this year was openness, and just like I love what I do for work, and there are times where I find it really heavy, especially post COVID. Like COVID had therapists carrying a lot, and so I'm looking kind of down the road, like 10 more years. Can I keep seeing 22 clients a week for 10 more years? I don't know. I don't know if I have it in me, but I love what I do and I don't want to not do it. And so, like, what could it look like to do it differently? And so, Substack was part of that experiment of like, what if I start doing some writing? And I mean, I've done writing in the past, but I've been very, very cautious about who I share it with because it just feels really vulnerable to like share your words. Um, but kind of, I'm going to be brave anyways and put stuff out there, and we'll see what happens. And I remember getting my first follower who wasn't one of my friends, and I was like, "Ooh, somebody who doesn't know me is following me." And I'm not at 600. I think I was like 86 the last time I looked, but I've turned off all those metrics so that I don't see when people unfollow me or whatever. I don't see any of that. I do see new followers, so it's always exciting when there's a new follower. That's so cool. And then part of it has been I've had a couple of these conversations this last week with people that I've met on Substack where I'm like, hey, I really resonate with your writing, and then it flows into should we chat? And so I'm finding like it's really engaging, and just the richness in conversations. And yeah, like I'm meeting people who we've got points of overlap, and there's a lot of things that are really different. And again, I love that. So yeah, I'm I'm happy to be kind of trying out some new things here, and I don't know.
You
We'll see what I say next time you ask me what do you write about. Maybe I'll have a better answer, but
you see 22 clients a week?
I do.
Damn, that's like 4.4 people a day.
Except I only see clients 3 days a week,
Oh,
sometimes 2 sessions on a Wednesday. So I usually see 7 clients a day, which is it's a
damn.
lot. Yeah, yeah. But it's also I found that when I see clients on more days than that, then my brain is in work mode on more days. And
Mm.
so I've intentionally limited my client contact days to very specific days. And then my other days are admin focused and supervision and my own therapy and stuff like that. So it
We all,
it works out. But yeah, it's a lot.
yeah. Anyway, I had fun, and
Yeah, I did too.
and I think we should land the plane too, because I hear my dog pacing up there. She probably wants to go outside and pee.
Yes, well, my dog's barked several times because I'm actually not at home. I'm doing my virtual seminar from Tofino, BC, which is beautiful, beautiful. I don't know if you can actually see, that's the ocean back there out my window.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
so I'm
that's
sitting
good.
I'm sitting up in the loft and my dog can't climb the loft stairs, so he's sitting downstairs. He's barked a few times already. He's like, I can hear her, but I can't get to her.
What
So
kind of dog do you have?
he is a Toulier, a Coton de Toulier. He's
Oh, so,
a dog of Madagascar,
yeah,
actually.
Coton de
Yeah,
Tuliar. Yeah, I've
there you go.
actually
See,
been
you've got the
yeah,
accent. I don't.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. It's a little white dog.
he's so cute.
Yeah,
Yeah, if you go
I
to my the about on my Substack, there's some pictures because I had an opportunity to do like a branding photo shoot, and they said bring whatever you want to bring, and I said, can I bring my dog? And they said, of course you can bring your dog. We love dogs. So we did a professional photo shoot with me and my dog. So he's on my website. He's everywhere. So yeah, if you go check my about section, you'll see him there. But he's pretty cute.
yeah, they usually are.
I know. And they
Yeah,
love us, right? So,
yeah.
yeah. Well, thanks so
Anyway,
much for inviting me to this. It's been awesome. And
thanks.
yeah,
Yeah,
let's go
it's
walk our dogs.
yeah, let's go do it.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, thank you, and we should. Damn, we've been for 2 hours. Damn. Okay.
I can't see who's on, so have people been here this whole time?
Yeah.
Wow. Well, thank you everyone.
Thank you.
It's
All
been
right.
great talking. Yeah.
Likewise. Well, thank you, and have a good rest of your workshop. And
Awesome. Yeah.
I'm in that beautiful area.
Thank you so much.
All right. Well, take it easy. Thank you.
Great. Yep. Nice meeting you.
Bye, everybody.